Welcome back to Bene Narras, where we still talk about all things Latin, writing, and books.
And I still live on a mountain. But to recap, real quick, this is Ben. Hello, Ben.
Hi, Ben.
Here. Yes, working on his first novella, and we're troubleshooting some of the elements that he's been having trouble with and giving some feedback. We are starting with characterization. All the characters are introduced very quickly in one chunk with no real space for getting to know them, which is going to make characterizing them a little hard.
Yeah.
So share your screen.
I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to throw my screen back up there so that everybody can see this. That's a Zoom screen there. And so this is the first scene that he's been working on. If you watch the first chunk, you've seen this before. I want to look at Marshall as an example of a character that you're having trouble with. Is Marshall your main character? I'm assuming he is, since he's the investigator, but I don't know. And that might be something to clarify. I think that giving your character's perspective and individual personality will help with that. I am particularly intrigued by the idea of a poet detective. So that is not the usual way of things, and I'm so in favor of it. Why did you pick Marshall as your investigator?
So I originally saw him as kind of a reader surrogate, which might be why he doesn't really have any of his own personality. I just saw, him being the reader and going where the reader wants him to go. Because I'd intended this to write it so that readers could read any chapter in any order. It's becoming more clear that that's not going to work. As to why I picked him. The story is inspired by a couple of the Marshall poems about this Dexter fellow, one about a boar hunt, and one where he dies under non-specific circumstances. So I thought it would be fun to have Marshall do the investigating because he's historically related.
I do agree with that as a teacher, and also as a reader, I kind of like the idea of this sophisticated book that I could read like in any order. But again, we're writing for students in a second language, so scaling it down some I think is useful. And I think you recognize that. And I'm super interested in these poems. I need to go read them apparently. But as a kid in a classroom, I really mostly just care about the character. I want to know who he is, why, and you have a really cool place to start, which is awesome, with why did Marshall write these poems? And why is he here now? Why does he care? What's his motivation? Now, you might not historically know the backstory, but sometimes that's actually better and more fun because that means that you get to make it up. And I frankly love making stuff up. So anytime I have the opportunity to do that, I'm like, yes. And I would really like to see some more details of him interacting with his environment and responding to the dead body in the room, the elephant in the room, so to speak. So what's his relationship to this dead body? How does he feel? And if he is our main character, I want to know something about who he is as a person.
Yeah, primarily what we have for Marshall is verbs, but no real process and no real interaction, which puts him kind of in the same place as the rest of your characters, just sort of an entry. So I think this is another one of those places where you as the author need to have some questions settled for yourself. If not before you dive in, then at least pretty early in the writing process. You got to know your guy and who he is. People usually demonstrate who they are pretty early on in meeting them through their behaviors and their mannerisms and the things that they say. And characters need to do that too. It makes them feel so much more realistic and helps us get to know them. Can you right now tell us more about Marshall's qualities as you imagine him?
Yeah, so like, I guess I'm thinking about favorite detectives, even the ones that are kind of stylized and tropey. They are characters that I enjoy spending time with or reading about. And I can see how Marshall here is being more just like a conduit through which I experience a crime, and not so much a person. He strikes me as a guy who's quick with a quip, eager to observe ironic similarities There's that one epigram where he talks about the doctor that changed his career and is an undertaker now, except he's doing the same thing he always did. So I can hear his kind of inner dialogue along the lines of like a Law and Order set of one-liners and the world-weary, the world is a vicious cycle kind of an outlook.
I can relate to that vicious cycle so much right now. And I think that's really where you need to start, knowing your character and what they want. And I'd love to see the sarcasm come out, although that can be really hard in a second language, but I'd love to see it, and the ironies that he sees and his attitude, so that I can relate to him. Like I just said, like, let's make him relatable.
And the fact that he becomes relatable means that you can experience him almost as a conduit because he becomes human. And it's really cool that you have an author that you're writing about because you have so much tone to work with, which is handy. One of my favorite pieces of advice is slow down, which I think is going to be useful here. I understand the desire to set up the clue tableau, but it's leading, like we've said, to a recitation of people. So what you've got here is they're not coming in and breaking off in the middle of a sentence. They don't move around. They don't interact. They're just described. They also don't seem to be particularly bothered by the dead guy on the floor. And one of them is his kid. So either that tells me a lot or something needs to change. So slowing down means that you have space to really sort of draw out the scenes and create behavior. Taking the time to draw that out and also showing movement creates an immersive feel. And they also aid in comprehension because the story will feel less choppy. That's also going to help you with characterization. And it's going to help with characterization because when you let your characters have space to have lives that they live in and that they lead, you can start giving yourself space to imagine how they behave in those situations, what their attitudes are, and so forth. We talked just a minute ago about thinking about your favorite detective shows and the investigators and the readers. Think too about what goes on in those shows. The investigator has to find the suspects, has to investigate them, has to have things drop into his lap, has to have middle of the night wake ups and realizations. It's like stretching out a rubber band. Stories should be a slow reveal. Start with the murder scene if you want to, although you don't have to, and then let your character investigate. You set him up to wander in a circle and interview people. If you space it out and let him travel and think critically and let it happen, let him meet people and so forth, in the now, not just describing what happened prior to the murder, the characters will by nature start to take on some life.
Okay. Yeah, I see that. Sort of a slow reveal of information lets the reader fit new information into a framework that's already established. And that seems more exciting too, though, when it feels like there's more secrets to uncover and it's not a closed set already of information.
Yeah, nobody likes a closed set. People like to explore, and you want it to feel exploratory and mysterious, like you said. So we want it to feel like anything could happen to increase the tension and interest. And another movement-related thing you can do to help your characters reveal themselves or information is to use location to your advantage. Maybe not everyone is waiting patiently for you to investigate them around the impluvium. Maybe Marshall knows he needs to talk to the daughter, so he goes looking for her, and the daughter's supposed to be at the fish market, but she's not actually at the fish market, she's at the harbor. They're probably close locations, but why is she there and not at the fish market? Use sights and sounds of the harbor to bring the scene to life, and then let her reason and her interaction with the harbor show more about who she is. Is she checking out the sailors? Is she bartering for fish fresh off the boat because she's a connoisseur of connoisseur of fish? Or is she actually like trying to escape on a boat because she's worried she's going to be accused of murder? Tell us about her and use that location to your advantage.
It's been a lot of fish with you lately.
It's been fish.
I see also that solves kind of the realism problem of them standing in a circle waiting to be interrogated. It makes perfect sense that they have lives that they're getting on with and grieving that they have to do and tasks that they've been assigned.
Or fish they have to eat.
Or fish.
Who knows? Yeah, so I would encourage you to use location and think about your characters and places that they might go, either because they're living their lives or because they're grieving, as you said, or because they're trying to flee because they're guilty of murder. But we're going to take a look at dialogue next, because I think that the scene could really use some dialogue. So if dialogue is something you're interested in or having trouble with, come join us there and have more
Dialogue
cookies.
makes a huge difference. I'm going to grab a cookie if anybody else wants to join me.
Fish cookie.
No.
Oh, gross.
And then we'll meet back here.
All right, see you in a bit.
Bye.